Well, as you know, the opposition candidate Atiku Abubakar has rejected President Buhari's victory at the just concluded ballot, calling it a sham election and vowing to go to court to challenge that decision. Delays and violence marred the run-up to the election, but no independent observer has cited electoral fraud. According to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, President Buhari got 15.2 million votes, while Mr. Abubakar received 11.3 million. Well, for more on this, let's speak now to the opposition PDP's Presidential Campaign Council spokesman, Prince Kassim Afegbua. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Tell us the basis for Mr. Atiku rejecting these results.
Well, you listened to him just a while ago when he was speaking. There are quite a number of discrepancies, a number of inaccuracies in terms of figures, in terms of turnouts, or alleged or so-called turnout of voters. And by the time we added up the figures, we saw very obvious discrepancies that tend to, impugn on the credibility of the electoral process and the voting process. Just like the example he cited, we were wondering why we have about 85 to 88% attendance in insurgency areas or states, Yobe, Borno, Zamfara, whereas states that have peace, so to speak, with some level of stability, recorded low turnout. And so we, because of our parallel voting tabulation which we have with respect to what actually took place at the polling units, we have cause to doubt the authenticity of what INEC turned out as the figures for the elections. And we have also, gone a step further to see that even with INEC declared results, and the pattern of the election is accreditation and voting simultaneously, you still see a discrepancy of about 2 million votes. Could it be you accredit somebody and they just left without voting because it's simultaneous? So there are quite a number of issues with the election and the election outcome. Added to that is the issue of violence. About 40 persons, confirmed, killed. Ballot box snatching, stuffing of ballot boxes, violence at polling units, so many other issues. So we have called on our team of lawyers to study all of those so that we can marry them with the requirement of what the law says. The Electoral Act 2010 as amended with respect to voting and election conduct, to see where we can text the veracity of those provisions in the law, because laws are meant to be texted and not just being laws for what they are.
So what are you actually seeking to do? Because I think there just needs to be a little bit of clarity on what you want. Are you seeking, Atiku Abubakar has been very clear that he rejects the results. And the assumption is that he rejects the results in its entirety, yes, which means that what you're seeking is a nullification of those results. Is that right?
Well, it will be the responsibility of our lawyers to, advance our prayers which will be seeking in tribunal to look into when we have examined all the issues that factorize the election of February 23rd. And from our own estimation, it appears there were two elections. One was at the polling units, which was conducted on February the 23rd. And the second was another election called collation, which made it almost difficult until Wednesday 4 a.m. before they could conclude an election of February 23rd. And don't forget that Senegal also conducted a similar election on February 23rd, and result and winner emerged within 24 to 36 hours. So we will leave that to our lawyers to determine, what our prayers should be, having examined the pros and cons of the information we gather on the field using our agents. Where our agents were chased out, we'll also know what to advance with our expert. Don't forget, our agent at the National Collation Center refused to sign the result sheet declaring President Buhari as a candidate, as the winner of the election. And we are also not going to recognize the outcome of that election until we're able to dispense with our tribunal cases. Whether President Buhari is said to be president-elect, that will not be recognized by us until we're able to dispense with our with our tribunal case, and through that process, try to strengthen the institutions of democracy in terms of legality of electoral conduct, in terms of addressing illegalities, unconstitutionality, and even putting to test the provisions of the Electoral Act, as it were. Because during the presentation of the figures, our agent did, occasionally raise very critical issues with respect to, figures not adding up. A case in point is Nasarawa State. 157,000 valid votes were excluded. We needed to be given the reason why that is so. Other places you have 38,000, like in Edo State, 38,000 votes were excluded. They were not said to be invalid. These are valid votes. Then what could be the rationale, what could be the reason? And several other states, even Lagos State. And so what about places where people were disenfranchised? The population of Amuwo, Odofin, Festac area and Mushin area in Lagos is quite huge. And because they know that these are some of our strongholds, like in Kano, Sabongari is a stronghold of the PDP. Now, you cannot have, with the manner of our electoral campaigns, with the content of our, our promises, electoral promises, you can't conduct election in Kano, 44 local governments, and you say that PDP didn't defeat APC in just one. That's curious.
Yeah, but that's not, what you're saying is not evidentiary. You're simply saying that it's a bit like somebody saying, well, how can this, studio be this hot?
Who says we don't have evidence? We have evidence.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that you're saying, I'm simply following up on what you said.
Yes.
You haven't shown me any evidence. What I'm saying is that you're sitting there and saying, how can the PDP win not even one local government? But the figures from INEC suggest that you haven't won any. And until you submit evidence, that's going to be the assumption that you're lost.
Well, I'm just giving you a scenario which will form a basis for some of the issues we'll be asking the court to do. That's right. Secondly, even where INEC attention was pointed to the infractions and the anomalies with respect to even Nasarawa State issue 157,000, there wasn't any plausible explanation as to why that took place. We've seen some returning officers complain about gunpoint scenario before they declare results. What has been the position of INEC on all of this? So our going to court is a civilized way to engage the process of this electoral contest. We are not going to apply the same jungle justice approach that the presidency, literally ordered before the elections when they say it is a bullet for ballot snatching. We're not going to do that. We are going to ensure that we test the veracity of our laws, the provision of our laws, with respect to when there have been abuses in the electoral process, in the voting process, to see whether the outcome of that election is actually a true reflection of the wishes and aspirations of Nigeria. You could see that even when the president was declared winner, there was some kind of palpable quiet in the polity. We didn't see that spontaneous response with respect to jubilation and all of that. It was later that we now start seeing people on the street in some selected states.
Well, that clearly is not evidence.
It is. We saw people smashing people's vehicles.
No. Obviously, the whole point of this, all through the ballots, every punter predicted that it was going to be a close vote. And what you saw was a reasonably close, it's actually wider. The margin of victory was much wider than I think was predicted. But the point is that everybody thought it was going to be a close vote. So if nearly 50% of people in an audience remain quiet because obviously their candidate has lost, then you can't use that as an example.
I'm talking about a country, not even the
audience. I'm just giving you an example because we didn't go around the entire country. We can only take examples of where people are seated together, pro and con.
If there are celebrations in the country, you will feel the pulse. If there is quiet, you also feel
right.
it.
But can I ask you this question?
Go ahead.
You talked about the voter tabulation that you have. In other words, because presumably you had agents across all the polling units, and all those elections are normally announced, and you have a record of yours, and you know the INEC has its own. When you match your tabulation against INEC's, what are you getting?
Of course, Atiku won the election by virtue of what we tabulated, because where figures were being removed, we ascertain those ones as valid votes. Like in Nasarawa, you remove 157,000. In some other places, 45,000. Some other places, 38,000, 22,000, 20,000.
No, but what I'm trying to understand, are you saying that in Nasarawa State, for example,
yes,
the figures that were announced by the INEC officer on the ground.
Those are cooked.
No, I'm asking you a question. Let me just ask the question. What you're saying is that when you were at the polling unit, the number that was announced at the polling unit was not the same thing that you. I mean, having tabulated all the polling stations, collated all of them. That's not the same thing you heard at the polling headquarters.
Yes, at the INEC headquarters. That's why I told you that there were two sets of elections. One was at the polling unit, which Atiku won. The other was at the collation point, which INEC has given to the president. So at the tribunal, we'll be advancing our evidences. We'll be showing graphics. We'll be showing video evidence. We'll be showing other evidences based on the result sheets that we got from our agents. And we'll be expecting the tribunal to look at all of these issues, whether these elections can actually hold based on INEC's own decision to, announce Mr. President. So the tribunal will have a whole lot of job to do in, doing that. Secondly, we're also going to carry out forensic examination of the ballot paper. So we have told the INEC not to destroy evidence, because we'll be seeing scenarios where ballot papers have been burnt. And so whatever they have, they should put that together. Let's see. When we do forensic evidence, we'll see whether one thumbprint was able to, thumbprint about 1,000 ballot papers, or whether it is one individual to one ballot paper, where card reader is not being used. Why did you not use the card reader? Because the law says you have to use card reader as the only means of voting. And you say, well, after accreditation, your biometrics are captured, you go to the next point, which is collecting the ballot paper to go and vote. Why was there discrepancy between those who are accredited and the actual figures that came out, which is almost about 1.9 to 2 million votes? So we are going to be looking at all of that, and in the final analysis, we expect that the tribunal will do justice to
with all due respect, some would say that you're just a sore loser.
We are sore losers?
Yeah.
No, if the process was seen, you see, before the election, we had been, hammering on one point, that in any electoral context, you have to make for a level playing field, not just by mere sloganeering, but by the fact that everybody must see it to be a level playing field, so that the outcome of such an election will be accepted by those who participated in the election. It is not about being a sole loser. If the terms are right, if the procedure and processes are transparent and they are credible and there's a level playing field, then we will not have problem. Don't forget that the president gave an order that if you snatch ballot boxes, you'll be shot aside and all of that. Even at that, he gave the military the opportunity to now act on behalf of the president. Don't forget the chief of army staff said the president has given an order, they're going to carry it out. And you know, definitely such an order will be abused by overzealous security personnel, whether be it the military, be it the police, and what have you. And so, the Nigerian electorate, you know, were confronted with this kind of scenario. And in the final analysis, we now have established evidence on our hands based on our own technology that we put in place, both on the persons who are present at polling units, and we've been able to articulate all of this and put them together. And we're saying that, yes, we're not going to take laws into our hands. We're not going to unleash violence on the populace. We're saying that we want to approach the tribunal to test the veracity of the laws. If there are infractions in A, B, C, and D, what are the penalties? If the penalties are right, fine. If they are not right, it will now be led for the judiciary to decide.
What could the legal process look like in terms of the length of time this could take the courts to reach a conclusion? Because, I mean, there have been some suggestions that this wrangle could go on for over a year. I mean, if you're talking about the sort of forensic, forensic evidence that you need to submit to the courts, and it could actually probably take longer than that, because obviously the opposing side are going to want also to have adjournments and all kinds of things in order for them to examine the evidence that you're proposing to submit or that you submit. I mean, this could go on for the next 4 years.
Well, it won't go on for 4 years, because the procedure for tribunal cases now are purely front-loading. You front-load your evidence and all of that, then you go to the tribunal to argue them out. So that also reduces the amount of time you spend, you know, with respect to...
Yeah, but it's not just going to be the election tribunals. It could go all the way to the Supreme Court.
The first point of call is the Court of Appeal for presidential election. Then from there to the to the Supreme Court. And when a case goes to the Supreme Court, you are not advancing any new thing. You are just looking, it's like an appeal court to the Court of Appeal. So they to just follow that pattern. But whether it takes 1 year, whether it takes 6 months, it will now be led for the judiciary to decide. But our responsibility is to articulate our position, assemble our team of lawyers, let us look at the different areas based on the reports we got on the field, and put them in perspective so that it will not be a matter for the judiciary to decide. And whatever they decide, if we're satisfied, fine. If we're not satisfied, we'll proceed to the Supreme Court. And once the Supreme Court gives a verdict, that becomes the position of law. But it also helps to also ventilate the electoral process, to also help to strengthen democratic institutions.
Yeah, but is it going to ventilate the electoral process? Because, I mean, the other question must be, I mean, first of all, legal experts who are familiar with the processes of election tribunals all the way to the Supreme Court are projecting that by the time this goes through the court system, from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, we could be looking at anywhere up to 10 months and beyond. But do Nigerians have the stomach for that kind of long, drawn-out case? And I'm not just talking about PDP supporters, but Nigerians as a whole.
If I tell you the deluge of telephone calls we've been receiving, emails,
from people who support you.
Yes, if I tell you, then you know that they are actually waiting for this tribunal to commence. And don't forget that, you see, whether it is 10 months, whether it is 1 year, what is important is for us to advance the issues. Let us look at them from the legal point of view.
Right.
You know, the laws are made to test situations. And we have gotten a situation in our hands that, in our own estimation, does not meet up with the expectation of our people and as our supporters and our voters. And it's our responsibility to give them that judicial backing, to give them that leeway for them to...
No, that's perfectly understandable.
Yeah. So whether it's going to last, don't forget that General Buhari went to court in 2003, yes, he went to court in 2007, he went to court in 2011.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're well within
we're going to try that. Rather than calling people out to violently protest, it's better for us to follow the civilized conduct. We're not going to behave like the
absolutely.
APC.
I think a lot of people would agree.
Yes.
Prince Kassim Afegbua, who is a spokesman for the PDP's Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.